Tonight's presentation is Rotax 9 series engines and Sonex aircraft. With us tonight is Mark Schaible. He is the owner and president of Sonex. He has been an employee there since 2003. He's a member of our EA safety committee. He led the 1 week wonder build of the Sonex in 2022, and he's been a EA member since 1994. Also with us tonight is Casey Cooper, owner and president of Cooper Aircraft Corporation. He's a manager of the Arizona Ultralight Aviation outfit out there in Arizona. He's been an aircraft mechanic since 2013. He's built his own Sonex and he flies that. In fact, that picture is him flying his Sonex, and he's been a member of EA as well since 1995. So guys, I appreciate you jumping on here and getting us up to speed on the development and installation of the Rotax in the Sonex aircraft. We've got a great turnout of over 230 people already. So over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Charlie, and welcome everyone. Boy, Charlie, I look at those pictures of us and I just think, man, we were young when we took those pictures. And Casey, welcome to you. It's great having you on, and I actually get to take a break from talking a little bit here so that Casey can talk about his products. So tonight is an update from a webinar that we did almost exactly 2 years ago, talking at that time on the same subject about Sonex aircraft and Rotax installations. And we were on the heels of the 2022 1-week wonder build, which was a Rotax 912 IS powered YXB. And I described some of the work we had done in terms of trying to get the cooling right and some other things, some of the challenges we had and some of the things that people were doing, including Casey. Before I get started on that, just for those who have not heard one of my presentations before, maybe haven't been to our website before. So Sonex is an all-metal, two-place side-by-side kit aircraft, and it's been available since 1998. And the whole mission of the airplane is to be super light and super simple, and to have really great performance, including aerobatics. And as you can see in the picture here, the airplane is really sleek, and the fuselage is airfoil shaped, and it's designed to leverage horsepower really efficiently. And so we can get really excellent performance, really good cruise speeds on relatively very little horsepower. So I'll talk about that more as we go on. So the Sonex is our original model, and now it's progressed to what we call a B model, which has got a little bit wider cockpit and a little more creature comfort, a little bit more fuel, and some other features that you can read about on our website. We also have the YX, which is also now upgraded to the B model. Only difference between the YX and the Sonex is that it has a Y tail. So when you look at that picture, it's not a V tail. It's got that little rudder on the bottom. So we call it a Y tail, and it does make quite a bit of difference in the handling qualities versus a traditional V tail. And as the tagline says here, you'll get all the attention at the pancake breakfast with the YX, as opposed to the Sonex, where you'll just get most of the attention. You'll notice here on these slides that I have build and fly for prices, and this is not the kit price. This is the cost that we figure you would have into it as a minimum cost at a base model level to actually build and fly the airplane, including the kit, engine at some of its least expensive options, basic avionics and prop and upholstery and so forth. So if you check out our website, I invite you to click on the pricing tab on each of our different aircraft model homepages, and you can actually see where we come up with this number and how you can help figure out the budget for building your own Sonex aircraft. We have a motor glider called the Xenos, and it's basically a Sonex or YX cockpit with a longer tail cone and much longer wing and bigger tail. It's up to a 46-foot wingspan, as you see it pictured here with the longer wingtips on it, and it is meant to self-launch and shut the engine off and go soaring. It can also cruise at a pretty good clip. You can get from point A to point B at 100 miles an hour or better. So it makes it great to commute to a soaring site from your home airport where you might have better lift, or just take it on a trip somewhere. So it's a really great airplane. Very niche, of course, but it's gained a lot of popularity through the years. And then we have the 1X, and this is a single place airplane, so that's why we had fun with the name by just clipping the S off the front, because it has one seat, so it's the 1X. And it is our, we are, I'll say, we've always said we're the low cost leader. This is our low cost leader of the fleet. And you can see there in our build and fly for price. The mission of Sonex is really always been to be competitive with the cost of a nice new car. And we've done, I'm proud to say that we've done a good job in keeping with that philosophy. So it is possible. So we have various engine options available for our airplanes. And one of the things we also do at our company is we have a separate brand, if you will, called Aero Conversions. And the flagship product of the Aero Conversions is the AeroV line of engines. So these airplanes were all designed to use VW power of about 80 horsepower. And they've served us and our builders extremely well through the years. The AeroV engine is a kit, as you can see here in this picture. It's all laid out on the floor. You will actually be assembling it. And you can see here, this is a turbocharged version, which is 100 horsepower. And the normally aspirated version is 80 horsepower. So if you're looking to build the airplane at an absolute minimal cost, and you really like the idea of getting the hands-on experience of building your own engine, check out the AeroV at either on the Sonex website or at aeroconversions.com. We even have a step-by-step, I believe it's about a 30-chapter video series on YouTube and on our website of actually how to put the engine together. So it's fun to watch even if you don't plan to build the engine. We also, through the years, have used Jabiru engines quite extensively, especially the Jabiru 3300, which is long been considered, I'll say, almost the gold standard for performance in the Sonex. The 120 horsepower Jabiru is far more horsepower than the Sonex needs. So therefore it is a ton of fun. So a lot of people go that way. I would say in terms of the fleet out there worldwide of finished and flying Sonexes, it's a pretty even split, just about 50-50 between AeroV installations and Jabiru 3300 installations. Some Jabiru 2200s, which we did more in earlier years. It is a bit light on the nose for weight and balance. Most people either do AeroV or Jabiru 3300. And then we have some of the engines, other engines out there that are kind of becoming more popular through the years as support gets better. So the other engine to mention here is the 4-cylinder UL Power engines. And that's been an option in our fleet for quite some time, probably since about the time that the B models were introduced in 2016. But people were installing them even prior to that, and actually happened to fit pretty well with our Jabiru 2200 engine mount that we had offered originally. And it's again, as you can see, it's a conventional architecture, horizontally opposed engine like the AeroV or the Jabiru or Continental or Lycoming. The difference with the UL Power engine is that it is FADEC control and has electronic fuel injection. You know, there's some performance advantages to be had with that, and you know, some other things to think about in terms of having a little bit more reliance on your electrical system, which, you know, that's a personal choice in terms of what you prefer. We're actually going to be putting the 130 horsepower UL Power 350 IS on the Sonex High Wing prototype, the #1 prototype that we're building right now. So that'll be the first time in our factory that we'll get hands-on with the UL Power engine, and we're excited for that process and that learning experience. And maybe in the future we'll have a webinar like this to talk about that installation. But builders have done the installation on their own for years, and the support out of the the dealer in Georgia in particular that we work with at Keolan Aviation is really excellent. So that's another choice for you. And then we have the Rotax. So we'll go through and we'll talk about what we've done in the past, what we've recently introduced just in the last month or so for the Rotax installation. And we'll talk about the support that's available through Casey and Cooper Aircraft Corporation. So you can see here all these cowling cutaways. That was when we designed the B models, we had to design a new cowling, and we wanted to make sure that each of these engines would fit nicely in these cowlings with minimal modifications. And that's worked out by and large pretty well for us. So we got our first hands-on experience with Rotax for the One Week Wonder 2022 project, where we built a YXB in a week during AirVenture, and we used the Rotax 912 IS power plant that was donated for the event by Rotax. And you can see here Nino from Rotax, who many of you might know. He's quite a character, a wonderful guy. High-fiving Casey, our own Casey Cooper, on the panel here with us today. On the last day, on Sunday, as we were pulling the airplane out of the tent to the flight line so that it could fire up and taxi for the crowd. So we got it from a kit with all just parts and boxes to this stage within a week, which was remarkable. And I'm still tired just talking about it. So to prepare for that event, we got another Rotax engine that our shop manager, Chris Nash, agreed to install in his own personal Sonex build. So we developed a lot of the preliminary work for the installation in the months leading up to the One Week Wonder for that installation. Prior to that, we had been offering motor mounts for a while. Again, this is new since the advent of the B models in about 2016. And we offered bed mounts, and we worked actually with Casey to refine the red parts that you see there. He basically designed these, this shock mount system that we sell. And so we sell this kit. You can see the price there. It's currently priced at $446. And this is directly applicable to our own bed mounts for our airframes, and any other bed mount you might want to build for another experimental. I actually just had a guy call and order one for an aerodrome aircraft that he's building. So one of those World War I replica type home builds. So it'll be, it'll be fun to see how he does with those on that airplane. We just recently announced, though, due to popular demand, we are coming out with ring mounts for the Rotax. And, one of the reasons that we didn't do the ring mount is because there is extra expense involved. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. But there are some major advantages in terms of just the structural rigidity of this more conventional engine mount shape. You can see this looks just like a Continental or a Lycoming mount. And that's really been in demand. If you want to do any kind of like gentleman's aerobatics in a Rotax powered airplane, you really shouldn't do it with a bed mount, but with a ring mount, you have plenty of structure to be able to do it. Now, Rotax technically says you're not supposed to do aerobatics, but unofficially, loops and rolls and positive G maneuvers are fine. Here's, the ring itself. So this is not the part that we make. The previous slide was the piece that we make for our airframes. But this is the Rotax end. So you can see there what's number 1 in the diagram, if you can see the numbered callouts. That's the suspension frame, or the ring, as you would call it. And I just looked up on well, shoot, they used to be called Leaf. I can't remember the name of the business now here in Wisconsin, but they listed the price. They currently list the price of that ring for $1,196. So that is additional money that you would have to spend versus the $400 some for our bed mount parts. But again, widely believed to be a better mount system, and people, have told us that they'd rather go this direction. The real kicker is if you look at items 6, 7, and 8 on the diagram, kind of in the middle on the bottom, those bushings, the shock mount rubbers and the washers and that bushing number 8, that whole kit, a set of 4 of them, sells for $1,226, according to Leaf. And I'm sorry, I'm saying the wrong name, but it used to be Leaf. That's more money than that weldment that you see there is number 1 in the diagram. So that was a major driver as to why we wanted to avoid the ring mount in the first place. But we actually got some great feedback from Casey that at least one builder that he knew of, and maybe more, were using our Jabiru shock mount rubbers. You know, for years, we've made our own rubber shock mounts for Jabiru engines that are of a higher durometer rubber. So they don't sag in the motor mount. They do a much better job of keeping their rigidity, and they've become very popular. And so Casey pointed us to a builder that had done that, and it's reported great success with it. And so we put together a kit of our own Jabiru rubbers, our own washers and bushing, and a set of 4 of those is only $235.08, as you see there. So we feel that's a pretty great value as a competitive alternative system. So here you can see the rubbers at the top of your screen. On the right, you can see the builder that Casey directed me to, and that's a custom engine mount that he welded up himself on the Sonex to mount to the Rotax ring, and you see he's got an Edge Performance engine on it, modified Rotax. So even more power out of that engine. So really asking more out of those rubbers. So we decided to go ahead with that and make our own parts. So you can see there the bushing and the 2 washers, all aluminum, that we created to get the proper spacing per the Jabiru mount pin specs. And we make this chromoly steel cup and ring that's integrated into our motor mounts. As you saw, let me back up a couple slides here. You can see it there, welded, integrated into our airframe motor mount. And it's made specifically to size for the Jabiru rubbers. And we also, so all you need is our engine mount and that shock mount kit for $235, and you've got our side of the deal. And then you need the suspension frame from Rotax. We also announced at the same time that we are selling a scratch builders kit, if you will, which is all the same parts, the rubbers and the bushing and the washers and all of the hardware that you need to add to our motor mounts, but we're also adding the cup and ring weldments as well. So you can actually buy that ring there that you see pictured in the middle lower of your page and weld it into your own motor mount. So if you're, again, scratch building an airplane, or you've got a kit airplane that you want to use our rubbers on and you want to have a custom engine mount made, you can buy those rings from us. The whole kit with the chromoly rings and the shock mounts and bushing and washers and AN hardware is $523. And 8 cents. I don't know where we came up with the 8 cents, but it was probably just easier than putting an 8-cent discount in the transaction. We do use AN7 hardware, like many people do, but all of this stuff is sized, especially if you're not in the United States and you'd rather use the traditional Rotax M10 sized hardware, you can do that as well. Here's a diagram which you can download from our website showing in cross-section how this mount system works. On the right, you can see the phantom circle, which is basically the round tube from the Rotax suspension frame, and you see the mount pin that's welded into it. That's 40 millimeters as its average, nominal length within tolerances. You can see the shock rubbers there sandwiched around our chromoly cup and ring assembly and all of the washers and bushings and the hardware. So this is basically the installation drawing for putting this together. And then we also announced our own prop hub spacer. So one of the ways in which we get the Rotax to fit nicely into a Sonex cowling is we set it well, about 42 millimeters or so further aft in the cowling. And that gives good clearance for the exhaust, which I'll talk about later. And it can fit nicely in a traditional Sonex cowl. So we had, you know, for the last few years, recommended that you go out and you buy a prop hub spacer of about, you know, 46 millimeters or so, and use that. There are several on the market. None of them, however, at least that we've found, are this spool type. So usually it's just a solid block cylinder, and the prop bolts actually thread into the spacer. And so that means that you have to safety wire the prop bolts from the front of the prop, which means we don't get to use our really nice little solid aluminum hollowed out spinner, combination spinner crush plate that we like so much at Sonex that you see there attached to the front of the prop. So we decided we were going to make our own because we like making lots of pretty red machined parts at Aero Conversions. And so we've come up with this system. It has stainless steel drive lugs that go into the Rotax prop flange itself. And then there are prop drive lugs that are integral to the spacer. And everything is contoured and counterbored so that you get a nice flat prop made up to it. It's the standard 4-inch bolt circle that the Rotax prop hub has. So although this is designed specifically to work with our Sensenich wood and composite coated wood props, this should be able to work with a number of different props. And we have a drawing of it so you can check that out for yourself and check compatibility. But we're taking orders for this prop hub spacer now, and you can see that's priced at $325 as the spacer with the stainless drive lugs. So we've always preached for years, even before we did our own installation. People have been putting Rotaxes and Sonexes for many years now, way before we did the B models, and they usually, you know, had to roll their own installation, design and build their own engine mount, and figure out everything. And we've always railed against some of the really draggy Rotax installations that we see out there. As you can tell really well from this picture of the YXB, that we work pretty hard to keep a really nice streamlined, clean cowling. And you know, it serves us really well in terms of the performance and efficiency of the airplane. So we always tell people, whatever you do, keep it streamlined like this, not like that. That is what we want to avoid. Now, you know, that, you know, it's red, so it's kind of pretty, and obviously it's, you know, not meant to be the speedster that a Sonex is, but you can see the big flat plate drag area of the radiator installation, and that's really what we want people to avoid if they want to retain, you know, the great performance and the aesthetics of the Sonex as well. So we did it in the 1 week wonder, and you can see here an iteration of the cooling inlet on the one side there, of the NACA scoop on the side. And it's kind of hard to see the real shape of the cowling because the blue is so dark in this Stars and Stripes paint job, but it really came out beautifully. You can see here under the cowling of the installation we developed. And you can see on the left that we went with dual radiators plus an oil cooler. And you know, the real driver for that was we wanted to simplify the installation for people with tricycle gear. And we felt that we'd have better cooling with 2 radiators instead of 1. That turned out very much not to be true. We didn't go with the Rotax radiator, and we really should have. You can see in the upper right, you know, in the very earliest iteration of the installation, you know, we were basically scat hose tubing from the conventional inlets behind the prop back to the radiators, and then later on we went to those NACA scoops. You can see there as I'm carving and fitting it into that cowling. This was a couple of years ago. The bigger NACA scoop on the bottom. The NACA scoop on the top, by the way, the smaller one is the fresh air inlet for the engine. The IS engines need to have fresh air from the outside because not having a mixture of fuel running through the intake manifold makes them run hotter. So they need cool air from outside. So, we worked with this and, we still weren't really happy with the cooling. But we were aware of what Casey Cooper had been doing, and he was having tremendous success with his cooling coming from one of the hottest parts of the country and flying his aircraft to AirVenture here in Oshkosh in the hottest weather that we have here. So not only was he flying in dry, hot weather out there, but hot, humid weather out here. It gets very humid here in July during the hottest times. And so he was incredibly successful with the cooling on his engine. And as you can see here, he's got a nice streamlined design. So Casey, I'll bring you on at this time if you want to talk about what you did and what you're offering and what we've been doing.
Sure. Okay. So the first iteration of my plane was not pretty. It was ugly, like what Mark was talking about. Stuff hanging out there, just at the lower left-hand corner. The main thing was when I went to buy my airplane is I wanted a Rotax in it, and I know that not many people had done it, and it was an overseas thing. So first it was to try and see if it would even be a good match, and it was. It was just mine was hideous, and went ahead and flew it to Oshkosh, flew it back. I was like, hey, this is not a bad deal. So I went ahead and got a factory Sonex cowl and started cutting it apart and kind of adding stuff into it where I thought, where would be good, and that's what we came up with in the last picture there. So it's been very successful. It's cools well. I think the worst state, honestly, aside from Arizona, is Kansas. Man, I was flying through there in the middle of summertime, and it's 95 degrees from the floor up to like 7,000 feet. That place is humid and hot, but it still did okay. But as you can see there, that's the modified Sonex cowl on the lower left, and then painted and pretty on the right.
I just want to jump in here quick, Casey. The extra NACA scoops that you have on the bottom on each side is really more for your exhaust, right? To keep your exhaust from generating too much heat?
Actually, no.
No? Okay.
That was a failed experiment on my end. So I had put those in there with the intention on running two air inlets for my carburetors, and they didn't work out very well. Okay. So honestly, on my airplane, I have a couple caps on the back of them, and they don't get used at all. So they're there. I didn't cut them out. It requires a lot of work, so there they live.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So.
So I just want to step through here. You've got on the, like you said, on the left, your original installation that you flew to Oshkosh in 2021, right? And then in the middle there, it looks like you put the radiator kind of in the new location, and you looks like you ran it, maybe flew it without a scoop. Is that right? Was that your next step?
Yeah. So that center picture is I got donated that cowl actually by Chris Nash. So it used to be an A model, his airplane, he converted it to B model. So he donated that to me so I could use it to do product or scoop testing for what I have in the lower right there. It's the same exact basic idea. If you see that on the lower right compared to one of my cooling kits that I offer, that one's a lot shorter, but it's because it mates up to my cowl a little bit differently. But that center picture, yeah, I tried it first without a scoop, and it was actually pretty successful in weather up to about 85, 90 degrees. But when I went to go fly with when weather was about 100 or 110 on the ground, my temperatures were way too high for what I wanted. So I made a fiberglass or a scoop. I pulled a mold off of a cowling, and that gets grafted into the kit over that hole there. If you're ever going to fly, if you're just going to fly in cold weather, yeah, you could just fly it with a hole in there if you want. But I think the scoop does a much better job, and it
Yeah,
looks better.
probably a little better looking, right? And then
Mhm.
before we move on, I just want to point out to folks the on the right picture, you can just see it at the upper left of the rightmost picture. One of those solid prop hub spacers, like I was talking about, and that one, it looks like you were able to through bolt, right, and put nuts on the back.
Yeah, Saber's a propeller spacer manufacturer, and all those are through bolted. So that's just with aluminum drive lugs and bolts with nylocks on the back.
Right. And then you made a custom exhaust, a couple different iterations, the one on the left there that sticks out, the mufflers stick out, and then what you have now on the right.
Yeah, correct. So the one on the left, yeah, the mufflers are hanging out. It's awful and ugly.
Saber
um,
tooth.
yeah, the one on the right is a little more refined, and I did back pressure testing with it to make sure it fell within the parameters that Rotax wants, and it's almost just completely open. That thing is a pretty grumbly for a Rotax.
Yeah, which we sure like. We like them to sound good. And it's a great picture there. You can see our mount, our bed mount, and the Rotax attach bars that Casey helped us design there on the engine. So yeah, getting back to your story, Casey, why don't we start looking at the kits?
Okay, so yeah, these are the current cooling kits that I offer. This one in particular is for a conventional gear Sonex. So um, you have those in the lower left picture. You have two attached bars. The one closest to you is attached to the radiator. The one furthest away is attached to the oil cooler. They sit on top of a junction V on the gear leg truss that goes to the actual bed mount. And the Adele clamps wrap around those tubes and hold it in place. And you can see the fiberglass scoop there in the center, and then the lower right picture there. That was in the process of pulling a mold off of the cowling. So that's not actually the scoop. That's my plug, so I could pull the molds to make those fiberglass scoops.
Yeah, that's a good illustration kind of how your fiberglass scoop will go on though. You'll basically just be grafting it to the cowling, to our stock cowling, as you see there. And so it's, as fiberglass modifications go, it's a really straightforward one.
Yeah, it's very simple. Doesn't require a lot of extra effort, and a tremendous amount of change to the Sonex cowl or the look of a traditional Sonex.
Right. So this is what you call the basic cooling kit, with basically the cooler set up with the baffles and the scoop, right? That's kind of the basic kit for
Yeah.
1350, I see.
Yes, so that has your coolant radiator, your oil cooler, provisions to mount it and graft it into your firewall forward. But this basic kit doesn't include all the extra goodies just to plumb it up and get it situated.
Right. And it's important to point out, and again, I kind of skipped over the illustration here. So you're using the Meredith effect, which is, really got famous with the P51, right? And also that your oil cooler and your radiator are actually right there together, and one is in front of the other a little bit, with some space underneath it for the element that's behind it.
Yeah, so we got the radiator in the back, got the oil cooler 2 inches in front, and air is allowed to pass through, around, and under the oil cooler to go through the radiator and out the back. Um, Actually, when I redesigned my cowling, I just had the radiator and the oil cooler sitting behind my inlet duct there, and I was experiencing cooling issues. And I went back and studied something I could just add in there. And the Meredith effect is very cool. If you haven't studied it, it's pretty interesting. So you just make up, you measure the square inches of radiator that you have that you're trying to cool, surface area, and you calculate your inlet size, and then you can throttle the outlet of your cooling assembly there to pressurize the system. And just in short, when air is pressurized, the molecules are more dense, increases cooling. And then also by choking it down at the back, it increases air velocity coming out and helps reduce cooling drag, which is why the P51 actually experiences thrust from their cooling assembly at higher speeds.
That's great.
Yeah, and in our situation, obviously we're not picking up any speed, but it works.
No. Well, and you've got it pointed down, so maybe we're picking up a little lift, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So then here's a couple of other pictures of the installation. You can see on the left there the baffle assembly with the coolers slung underneath the engine, and you can see from that that silicone P-seal there how it contours the cowling, the shape of the cowling. And on the right you can see the assembly kind of laid in the bottom of the cowling, and you can see it's contoured for that little blister that runs down the front of the cowling. It looks like you also have an attachment screw at the front of it, just to keep it from the air pressure from wanting to separate it from the cowling at the front there. So that's pretty simple and tidy and pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that customer there on the lower left, he lives in Australia, or not Australia. I say Australia. He sounds Australian. He lives in Florida, so he's installing that right now, and he sent me a few pictures, and his project is going along really well.
Great. And then you get to, as you mentioned before, your complete kit. So you can see here laid out more of the stuff. And also it's you can see this version is made for a tricycle gear. So it's got the sort of the contoured out areas for the motor mount tubes required for the tri-gear, and the hole in the middle that the tri-gear, the nose strut goes through, and the nose strut spring. So that's a pretty interesting. And I also noticed, Casey, I didn't pick up on this until just now, the contour in the front of the baffle is a different shape. Is that because it's for an A model cowling instead of a B model cowling?
Correct. So yeah, you guys have a slightly different underbelly from A to B. So B has kind of a more pronounced little raise in it, where the A model's kind of just a wider bump.
Right.
So
right.
that one is going to Derek Schroeder in Nebraska. So he is installing that on a YX Legacy, and he got that the other day, and he's going to mount that engine mount up this weekend, he says, and he's already got the engine in the crate, and he'll be well on his way soon.
Yeah, I talked to him last week. He sounds pretty excited, so that's great. So what's all in this picture here in this advanced kit? And you can see the price there, $1950. What do you get for the extra money that we're seeing there laid out on the floor?
Okay, so yeah, you obviously you have the mount, or the engine mount comes from you guys, from Sonex. So, and then the fiberglass mount or fiberglass scoop and cooling assembly is the basic portion. In the complete kit, that comes with an oil thermostat, all the hoses, all the fittings for your entire oil system and cooling system. That comes with your oil catch can, usually on a Rotax, they have the oil tank, and there's a nipple on there, so when the oil gets hot enough, it vents out the stuff out the bottom of your airplane, that whatever contaminants, and usually just kind of sprays all over the bottom of your airplane. So the oil catch can is there to catch most of that, so you can keep the bottom of your plane looking good. And that's the black canister on the right. The upper right canister, the silver canister, that's a coolant overflow bottle. And that also comes with the bracketing and clamps and everything to mount it to your firewall and hoses and everything. That is not the traditional Rotax overflow bottle. They sell a plastic bottle, which is fine. We do not have a mounting bracket or anything for the standard Rotax bottle, but that's what we use, and that's what's in my airplane. Also, you can see to the left of the cooling assembly, there's another bracket there, mounting bracket with large hose clamps on it, and that's for the Rotax oil tank. The Rotax is a dry sump engine, so your entire oil reservoir is outside the engine, wherever you put it by the firewall. It's a three liter system. Some systems take more oil than that, just because of different size oil coolers and such. But that's for your tank.
That is made, the bracket is made specifically to keep the tank vertical on our 30-degree angled firewall, right?
Correct. So if you can imagine, if you put an oil tank at 30 degrees and already just in straight and level, and maybe you're in a hard descent, the pickup tube in the bottom of the tank is going to start sucking air. And that could cause cavitation in your oil system, and that could be detrimental to your engine and your airplane. So that keeps it at an angle, so no matter what flight attitude, as long as it's positively loaded, you're picking up oil. Also comes with the venting material to put vents in the top of your cowling. So there's no heat soak issues. When you shut the engine off, the air has somewhere to go away from your ignition modules or fuel system or computer system, whatever. But yeah, as you can see, it comes with all the hoses, all the clamps, all the fittings. And also we have an installation manual that we send out with you to put everything in a particular place and just plumb everything up aside from fuel. And we don't handle your wiring either. That's up to you. So a traditional, like a 912 ULS, you could wire up that engine with 13 wires about. It does not require a lot of wiring. And of course, when you step into the to like fuel red cubes and stuff like that, you can start increasing the amount of wiring and stuff you have to do.
Yeah, or an IS engine, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You got to find somewhere to put the computers and fuse boxes and the fuel pumps and everything like that. So
here's a few more views of just sort of the kit, the tri-gear in this instance, as we were looking at in the previous slide, made it up to the engine mount. You can see how those mount tubes go into the area that you've clearanced out. Talk about how this one, the standard gear, the tail dragger system, 8L clamps to the motor mount. How does this one attach?
So this one you can see in the center picture on the left, there's a 30-degree angle bracket and there's a slot cut in the middle. That bracket is designed to mount to your firewall on either side of your center seam line of rivets. And so that leaves it independent from the motor mount. There's about a 3/8 of an inch gap between the back skirt of the cooling assembly and the firewall. And in the front, you still have that single screw that you put through your cowling and hold that lip down. So when you have the plane assembled with the cowling on, it's relying on the cowling, pressure of the cowling to press on the bottom side of that assembly, and that single screw to hold the front from lifting, and it basically just floats on the cowling.
Mm-hmm. Great. And like you and I were talking about yesterday when we were reviewing the slides, that silicone baffle seal in that center hole, you are probably going to have to cut that a bit to allow the nose strut spring to move freely and go in there. And we're not expecting it to be a perfect seal, right?
No, so I deliberately made the silicone in that center hole a little on the tight side. So when you get it, you can cut it to size to the spring, even maybe cut it in a star pattern, try and allow the spring to do some movement in there. If we get a little air out there, it's okay. It's obviously you're not going to have a perfectly tight cooling system on any airplane, but we want to do the best that we can. So.
Right. And, you know, I should have put a picture in this for people who aren't familiar with the installation, but with our horizontally split cowling, when you have a tricycle gear installation, you have a slot in the bottom cowling that goes from the hole for the nose strut back to the firewall. And then you basically have a cover plate that installs over that slot with piano hinge. And so that would just be installed into the very back flat portion of your scoop. And again, you just try to keep it as neat and tidy as you can.
Yeah, so it's that was one of the questions that Derek had, was how are we going to bridge that gap in the rear? And I said, you just use Sonex stuff, it'll work great. So.
Great. And before I move on here to another subject, you know, you've got all this stuff really nicely worked out, and then we went and made more work for you with these ring mounts. Casey, what's your plan there?
So with the bed mount, it poses all sorts of issues. I mean, trying to find an exhaust that works or cooling system that works. If you want to install a turbo model, that's just not feasible without a lot of work on the bed mount. So with the ring mount, it's wonderful because now we can start looking at all the different turbo variations that Rotax offers, or just even the regular 912 engines with a conventional single muffler exhaust. And this current cooling kit will continue to be supported for those that have a bed mount or maybe want to still go the bed mount route. But for the ring mount, we're going to do things a little bit differently to make sure we can accommodate the turbo models. So that includes, you know, the exhaust manifold, turbo, intercoolers, different oil cooler placement, radiator placement, or larger oil, radiators and oil coolers for those turbo models, since they make a bit more energy. And right now we have a 1X that we're going to be working on. Mark Firstel, he's got a wonderful 1X that he's building, and we'll be working out some of the details in the 1X first, and then hopefully a lot of that will, since it's a tighter package, we can transition a lot of that over to the A's and B models, and have great success with those also.
Great, looking forward to it. Yeah, so you know, we previously didn't have a Rotax mount available for the 1X, and now with the ring mounts we do. So we have them for all of our piston models, including the 1X, and really looking forward to seeing what you get for that. And I think you've got, behind Mark, you've got probably a bit of a line behind him of other people that want ring mount Sonex or 1X cooling kits for you. So looking forward to seeing that develop.
Yeah, you know, it's we were getting a lot of interest, and I can't tell you how many people realistically call more about the 1X than anyone. Like, I want to put a Rotax in my 1X. So it'll be very interesting to see how it turns out. So
yeah, very much so. So you also, as part of your business, Cooper Aircraft Corporation, make spinners. We want to talk about that a little bit.
yeah, so the carbon fiber spinners that I make, we specifically design them for warp drive props, but they will fit other propeller manufacturers with a flat face that requires a squash plate. These spinners, I tried to find a spinner manufacturer that made a spinner small enough to fit on a Sonex. Being that with Rotaxes, you're really not limited on propellers so much. There's quite literally hundreds of combinations that you could use. 2 blades on up to 5 blades, different diameters, different pitches, different manufacturers, ground adjustable, fixed pitch. constant speed. It's almost infinite what you can pick. So this one I designed specifically to fit the Sonex cowling. It will work on other aircraft. You know, I've sold there on a Tecnam. I've sold to a guy that has a Tecnam on high maxes and stuff like that, on pushers and tractors and everything like that. So we produce those, and I flew behind one for a while, and they're pretty cool. So it's got the integrated squash plate there, so that'll save you some money when you're trying to go buy a prop. And they're very simple to use. It's just a single bolt in the tip there, and you torque that to 7 foot-pounds, and it's kind of keywayed there on the hub, and you just leave it alone, go fly it.
Nice, nice. Yeah, it looks nice, and it's a great option for people, especially that want to do a multi-blade prop or a ground adjustable prop, like you were saying. And looks like a great opportunity. Maybe you can, if you put a hollow centered bolt in the front, maybe you could sell it to some RV12 guys that need a pitot tube there, right?
Yeah.
So just by comparison, you know, what we've always liked to do is our little combination spinner crush plate, and so therefore the nose, the prop hub opening in the front of the cowling is really small, basically the size of the prop hub itself, and little, you know, with some clearance, and the cooling inlets, because we traditionally use smaller engines, not big wide, you know, Continentals and Lycomings. So having the cooling inlets closer to the prop hub gets you more direct cooling access to your cylinders and your heads. And we've always, I mean, it's just the Sonex look, something that I really like. This is the Sensenich prop that we use, that you can order through Sonex for use on a Sonex. Now, we don't sell props for use on other airframes. These are matched specifically to the engine and to the airframe. But if you're looking for an alternative and you like some of the other stuff like what Casey's using, that's a great option. And at least like with Casey's, for instance, the spinner is small enough that you don't have to make major modifications to the cowling to make it look right. To make it look good, and of course, yeah, if you're building an airplane and you want even more power, like some of those turbocharged Rotax options, you obviously will have to have more than 2 blades, and so you'll have to look at that as well. So yeah, a lot of good options there. And so, you know, as we go along, we're trying to increase the support in general for this sort of ecosystem, just like we have for AeroV and Jabiru, and we'll be doing the same with UL Power. Also want to talk about exhaust. So we use on the One Week Wonder and on Chris Nash's airplane in our shop, the Toucan exhaust. And Casey, you've worked with Toucan a little bit. Actually, you're the one that turned me on to it. And I didn't realize till I sent them an email, and the email was responded to Greg Klemp, the guy that does all the welding for all the welded parts for Sonexes and has since the beginning of Sonex. And I had no idea that he was involved in this business doing these exhausts. So what a great synergy that turned out to be. And here's a picture of, we do have a Sonex version that he's made where the front pipes are raked back at more of an angle so that it fits nicely in our cowling. You can see it here. We just use straight pipes out the bottom, so you have 2 little pipes coming out the bottom, not extending out very far, relatively really tidy and clean. Now with the ring mounts, of course, we've made extra work, not just for Casey, but also for Greg over at Toucan. We did have to redesign the pipes to clear the new motor mounts. And here's SolidWorks rendering showing that first slide where you saw our first ring mount. That was the 1X ring mount. This is the ring mount for our 2-seat airplanes, for the Sonex YX and Xenos. And you can see it's got that 30-degree angle and a little slightly different architecture. This particular one is a tail dragger mount, so you can see the main gear receptacles in the bottom, the tubes that get the titanium rod gear. So you can see we've you can kind of see we used to have the mufflers parallel with the thrust line. And for this, we had to tip them down in the back a little bit just to get all the bends and the tubes to work out right and get it to work out. But these mufflers actually go up back to these pictures of them on other airplanes. You can see, like in the right picture, that's in a high wing pusher installation. You can rotate these exhausts around the heads of the engine to just about any position to fit, you know, just about any installation. So it's a really cool deal. And Greg is working on some enhancements to the design, some enhancements to the joint between the muffler and the front fore and aft header pipes, and some cabin heat muff options and some other things. So that's going to be good. And you're going to be working on his exhaust on some of your Sonex customers, right, Casey?
Yeah, and I think that'll be a great option for the Sonex customers. It'll just be something simple, still give you that hot rod sound, and like you say, the Toucan's really versatile. You can kind of just set it and forget it, and they really do save a lot of weight and complexity in some ways. So
Yeah, and the price isn't bad either, $12.95. That's pretty great for an exhaust system, for a Rotax exhaust system especially.
Absolutely.
So let's talk performance a little bit, Casey. We see some screenshots here. Unfortunately, to fit in one slide, I had to crop out the great, beautiful sunset backgrounds that you had in some of these pictures. So sorry about that. Those were really nice to look at. But what do you got going on here?
So that's just a traditional high cruise for the 912 in there. You know, people always ask me, what does your Sonex cruise at? And I say, well, between 100 miles an hour and 160 miles an hour. And they say, wow, that's a really wide range. And I talked to them about it, just how the Rotax, you can run them down or you can run them up, and at that cruise speed at 5350 RPM, I'm still getting 150 miles an hour and 160 true at 3,000 feet about. So you know, you can putter along at 5,000 RPM, 5100, and you still get 130, 135 miles an hour. You can run it up to 5,500 max continuous, and you're in the 160 mile per hour range, and that's my plane indicated. Yeah, so my engine's actually dialed in more for climb. I can actually top that thing out at 5,900 RPM, which is a no-no. So you really should be pitched for 5,600 and straight and level. And if you have your prop pitch like that, you could actually probably see potentially better numbers than what I have.
Right, great. Yeah, and just for everyone's comparison, these performance numbers are really comparable to what you would get in a Sonex with an Aero-V turbo, and so yeah, very close in performance. Maybe a little bit better in climb with the reduction drive Rotax. Just the torque curve is a little bit different, but not bad in the turbo either. So you have really great options there with both. And of course, as anyone who knows anything about Sonex, you know, a Jabbero 3300 powered airplane is going to go even faster. So lots of really great options there in the engine lineup. And in the lower right there, Casey, you've got two Sonexes. So look, you've got looks like a tri-gear Jabbero 3300 powered Sonex that you had worked with and flown for a little bit as well.
Yeah, so that was ours. I flew that for a while and kind of did some testing back and forth just to see how one performed to the other. It's hard to say just exactly how nice the Rotax feels, and just because no one really flies them yet. So in comparison to the 3300, I know this may be a bold statement, but I feel like the Rotax truly does everything better with the exception of cruise. The Jabbero might outrun us by 5 to 10, and in some cases that might not be a big deal for people because they're not trying to haul butt all over the place. But in terms of climb and takeoff performance, just the raw torque and the size of the propeller and disc area and everything, you're able to do a lot more low-end stuff with the Rotax instead of a direct drive. But the direct drive is meant for speed.
Yeah.
It's a powerhouse when it comes to getting up and going. So
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you know, also, you know, I should mention you're on a, I guess, what do you call it? It's a gravel strip, right?
yeah, it's a dirt strip and some gravel. Yeah, we maintain it here, and we have a few different aircraft that fly out of there, and a few Sonexes, and we're at the 1,600-foot long runways,
Mhm.
and I'll do just fine getting in and out of there.
Yeah, yeah, right. So yeah, I definitely, as I mentioned, the torque curve is different when you have, you know, a reduction drive engine like the Rotax. Your prop RPM is much more similar to a certified airplane, right? Your prop is going in the 2,500 RPM range or something like that. And so yeah, it's got the strength of that engine is at the low end, really.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the it depends on which gear reduction you have. It's 80 horse has a 227 to 1, and 100 horse a 243 to 1, and then so on and so forth. They change. But yeah, your prop speed is almost 1,000 RPM less than a 3,300 wide open. So
Right.
it's
Right.
pretty interesting.
Right, right. And I should mention too, you know, we've talked mostly about the 100 horse Rotax here. That's what you've worked on, exclusively. We do have people who've done Sonexes with the 80 horse Rotax as well, and they've been very successful with those as well. And I didn't mention, I should have mentioned this at the top of the hour, but we did also, another recent announcement is that we did just approve a gross weight increase for Sonex and YX. From 1,150 pounds max gross to 1,220 pounds if you have 100 horsepower or more. So if you have, yeah, Aero V Turbo, Jabiru 3,300, the slightly more powerful UL Power engines, or the 100 horse Rotax, you can take advantage of that little bit of extra useful load with the extra power loading and climb performance that you get at that higher weight. So that's something to keep in mind if you're considering a Sonex build as well. All right, I will throw it out to questions, Charlie, and I'm notorious for not leaving enough time. What do we got, 25 minutes for questions?
Maybe 10.
10, okay.
Good talk though. You didn't use all of it though. Usually Mark goes right to the end.
I
All
get
right,
so
so what?
excited. I can't stop
Yeah,
talking about our
yeah.
products.
Thanks, guys. It was really good, really enlightening. So let's start with William. He said, "Is there a kit available to install the UL 260 or a 912 in the 1X?"
So we do have motor mounts available for all the 4-cylinder UL Power engines in the 1X now. That's another new thing. And so yeah, you can do that. We don't have a firewall forward install kit for UL Power yet because we haven't gone through and done it at the factory yet. We're still working on the Sonex High Wing prototype, and that will be our first in-house installation. And we hope to develop a manual from that. I do have to say though, again, as I mentioned before, Ray at Keolan Aviation in Georgia gives really good installation support. So, he's guided a lot of our customers through their UL Power installations. And then, yeah, for Rotax, as I showed, that first ring mount slide is the 1X ring mount. And, between getting the mount from us and getting support and cooling installation from Casey, you've got all the support that we've been talking about tonight.
All right. Let's see, another question from William. He says on Casey's installation, how does he inspect the exhaust system due to the heat covers, the wrap that you have on there?
Well, so the exhaust wrap on there, I actually ended up taking it off. It wasn't completely necessary, and it was driving up my EGTs a little bit. So I went ahead and took it off. I just didn't need it. and that's a very valid point. With heat wrap, you can encounter things like rusting, corrosion, cracking. No. So in that case, it's not on there anymore. So I get to inspect it whenever I have the cowling off.
All
Yeah,
right.
we've kind of philosophically gone away from the heat wrap, I would say, on just about everything except the AeroV turbo. We still like to use it on the header pipes for the turbo.
Okay. Chris would like to know, how much different is the new Rotax mount going to be from the AeroV mount at the firewall? Will it be a plug and play, or will it need to be modified?
So it's pretty much the same. So the A models, it's a little bit harder to change engine mounts in general because the A model legacy Sonex engine mounts have a chromoly plate, a blade basically, that gets match drilled to some angle pieces that are extending forward of the firewall. So you have to, if you have a new engine mount that you're putting on, you have to transfer the holes, without elongating them in your existing holes in your airframe. But it can be done. People do it all the time. It's just you have to be a little extra careful. With the B models now, and I'll go back up to the slide of the exhaust system, you can see we have mount pins, traditional pins that just get bolts. So it's pretty much an easy swap out on both the B models, and the 1X is done that way as well.
Okay. Belford would like to know, has anyone put the new 914 Rotax engine in a Sonex?
So there's a really good example. If you go on YouTube, Thomas Hulkin from Edge Performance, he did a tremendous Sonex about 14 years ago where he took a legacy Sonex and he put in an 80 horse. He strapped on a turbo. He did all that stuff. So it's basically the same. And with his, he had a 3-blade Sensenik on his, and he was getting 2,300 feet per minute climb with that thing. And speed in excess of normal speeds that we would see. So it's been done by some of the best. He is really one of the best, and that's as far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that obviously, right. We all know nobody can ever have enough power, but as I said at the beginning of the presentation, our designs are really successful at leveraging smaller amounts of horsepower into really good performance. So, when you get really powerful engines, there are things you have to think about in terms of, runway handling. You obviously don't want to chuck all that power in right away. Rudder authority, those kinds of things, you have to handle them with a little more care. But yeah, it can be done. I think where people are going to be looking to do some of the turbocharged installations with Rotax, the more powerful engines will be probably with our high wing when it becomes available.
Yeah. Randy is wondering, is anybody looking at installing or working on installing a 916 IS or a 915 IS into a Sonex?
Everything I just said,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Do you know of anybody, Casey?
Yeah, I'm tentatively looking at converting my plane and going with the biggest Rotax I can get, just to make everything backwards compatible, and so you install the 916, all other models should work. So I'm looking into it. I don't know of anybody yet, but I'm sure when the time comes, it'll be released to the community and spread fairly quickly. So
All
Boy,
right.
money is no object too with that one.
It's R&D. All right. Michael asks, is an electric fuel pump required for a 912 ULS?
No. So you have manufacturers like Vans that runs an electronic fuel pump in conjunction with their mechanical fuel pump that's operated off of the gearbox, and that actually causes a lot of problems to continuously run both at the same time. It's a good idea to have one as a backup in case the mechanical one fails or you need to push a little bit of extra pressure, but an electronic pump is not required.
Okay. All right. Uh, let's see. And Austin asks, how is the weight and balance for the 912 IS looking for 1X with ring mount and Mr. Cooper's cooling? Also, how will the radiator attach to the airframe on the ring mount?
Yeah, so just on weight and balance, you know, when you look at weight and balance sheets from Casey's airplane and also the 1 Week Wonder, you know, the Rotax is a very light engine, but you have lots of accessories and weight in terms of coolant and oil and all that oil. So the weight and balance is pretty comparable. And Casey, I think you can speak to that specifically with your airplane, but in general, I'm not concerned with the 1X. I think it'll work out pretty well.
Yeah, the you know, in my plane, it operates fairly central CG, and it feels a little light in the nose if I'm fairly loaded in the rear with a passenger or baggage. A Rotax 912 ULS alone is 128 pounds. By the time you start adding components and everything, it definitely weighs it up probably about 160, 170 pounds. And a big part of that to combat that is if you do have any issues, you can add, you know, a 3-bladed propeller to the front, a 4-bladed propeller to the front. It may not be a lot of weight, but you're putting that weight further forward to help your CG. But there should be no issue, I'm sure.
Yeah, and by comparison, like a normally aspirated AeroV installation, we consider the full up installation to be right around 180 pounds.
Okay, and did you attach, he said also how will the radiator attach to the airframe on the ring mount? I don't know if you answered that part.
Okay, so in the way that I'll probably end up attaching that is it's not going to actually attach to the ring mount or the engine, while some people hang them from the engine. You know, most of the ideas nowadays are rip-offs from other manufacturers, and in this case, I'm fully admitting that a particular manufacturer like Aerotrek, that's our trainer that we use, the radiators actually mounts to the face of the cowling with one bolt. The lower pins on the radiator go into 2 holes drilled on a lip, and then there's a securing screw at the top, and the radiator just mounts straight to that. So it's fully floating, independent from the engine and the engine mount.
All right, and then Mark, you were talking about Leaf. It is now Advanced Power Plant Solutions, I believe.
Yes, that's a mouthful, and my apologies to them.
Okay. And then Derek just wanted to comment. He says he can't wait to get the conversion done on YX number 53. So very excited about that.
All right.
And then our last comment, Nayar says, happy holidays to everyone. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And I think that's a great way to wrap up. So with that, any closing comments, guys?
Casey, you got anything?
Yeah, thanks for having us here, Charlie, and thanks for having me, Mark, and you know, I'm really looking forward to working with these installations and supporting, you know, the whole Rotax line of engines, and see how many different ones we can get in different Sonexes, and run with what we got here. So.
Yeah, thanks, Casey. We really appreciate all the work that you've done. I remember some of our earliest conversations about, you know, I think your first call to me was that you didn't think the cowling was going to fit right. You didn't think the motor mount was putting the prop in the right place, and we talked through that and you know the cowl fitting and everything. And you know, boy, just very quickly you proved yourself, you know, to me not only as a really great, nice guy, but a really smart guy when it comes to these installations, and you helped us out greatly with the improvements to the bed mount that we made, and we're really excited to keep working with you in the future. You know, Rotax is not our main thing. If anyone who's followed us for any length of time knows, we kind of turned our nose up at it for a very long time. But you know, it is a very popular engine. It's very prolific out there, and we know there's a lot of interest in it. So we're really lucky to have Casey at his level of talent and enthusiasm to be able to help support everyone while we do all the other stuff that we have to do at the factory, like designing new airframes and supporting the airframe build, and of course, continuing to press forward with the AeroV line of engines and all the other stuff that we already make. So it's great to again offer options, because people have opinions, and some people love AeroVs, some people love Jabru, some people love Rotaxes. So we want to be able to make you all Sonex builders at the end of the day.
All right, just a reminder, we've got the High Wing webinar coming up during Home Builders Week. If you're interested in that project, Mark's going to cover that extensively in January. So thanks everybody, and have a great rest of your holiday season, and a wonderful 2025.
Thank you, Charlie. Merry Christmas, everyone.
And Merry Christmas, guys.